Hello everybody and welcome. This is going to be a re-recording of the first part of my playthrough for Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. The first recording, um, I made a honest attempt at it, but there were some technical difficulties such as some frame rate drops and myself being nearly inaudible compared to the game sounds. So we are going to delete this and start all over. We're going to be playing on fixed growth mode, meaning that characters will level up in ways that fit their class, as opposed to the other mode, which is almost entirely random.
Well, Ike, you had enough?
Here we can see our hot-blooded young shonen protagonist, Ike. You can tell he's the main character of a Fire Emblem game by his blue hair. This would be his sister Mist,
Yes.
also known as the perfect voice actor.
Ike? Oh no!
There's just so much emotion and concern in that. Oh no.
Mother.
You might not have been able to hear Ike right there, but he said mother. That was his and Mist's mother, Elena. Her name doesn't get brought up, I don't believe, till a bit later in the game, so I'll just introduce her like that now. Her name is Elena. Their dad's name is Grail, and they are part of a mercenary company led
That
by their
sun.
father.
Ah, you're up. About time.
Oh, Mist. I want to say your voice actor is at least trying. So something I always found interesting, or at least kind of cool, is the fact that Ike and Mist inherited the opposite parents' physical traits. Grail has the brownish hair, and Elena has the bluish purplish hair. And Ike, the son, has the inherited the blue hair, while Mist inherited the browner hair color. I don't know why. That's always just something that kind of stuck out to me. I thought it was pretty cool. Oh, Miss, don't be so sensitive. Every son is beat by their dad every now and then. Get with the times. See, he's fine. See, when your dad beats you, you just have to beat your dad back. Oh, I should probably not scroll through the text too fast. I want to make sure anybody with an interest to read it has time to read it. And here's our first volunteer punching bag, or party member. This is Boyd. He's a set of three brothers that are part of their mercenary company. He's the brash one. He prefers to use an axe as his weapon of choice. He's a bit reckless, but he is very strong. Ah, yes, siblings, always embarrassing each other. And he is going to be our sparring partner today. Sparring partner is code word for we're going to beat him to a pulp. So we're going to move like in range here. And this is the this is the combat forecast window. We can see the damage the opponent is going to do to us, the damage we're going to do to the opponent, chances to hit, and total HP remaining, as well as crit chance. The up arrow on Ike's weapon and the down arrow on Boyd's weapon represent weapon triangle advantage and disadvantage. It's basically rock, paper, scissors. Swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords. There's some mental gymnastics you can go through to cause that to make sense, such as swords being quicker and easier to wield as opposed to the heavy and slow axes, so they allow you to close the gap to the axe user and strike faster. But in the end, you can't really find a way to make the weapon triangle make complete logical sense. Like, you can say that lances are long weapons and could outreach a sword, and that would be fine, but then that wouldn't explain why axes beat lances, since the axes, at least in this game, other than maybe the pole axe, are maybe not quite as short in length as the swords are, but they're much shorter than the lances. Once again, obvious exception being the pole axe. So you might be able to hear the creaking of my computer chair in the background. You hear that, Boyd? You're easy. We're talking like Kirby's Epic Yarn. Easy, Boyd. Oh, do I get to fight Miss next? Nah, if only, right? She's just giving us drugs. Medicine. Alright, so here we are going to participate in the good old-fashioned father-son beat-off, but we're going to use this healing item first to make sure we don't accidentally die to our father. Always take time to heal your wounds in a battle, even small ones. By the time you think you're in trouble, it's probably too late. Don't get into that situation. Sage advice, Dad. Sage advice. Dun, 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 dun. Give it your all. So, I have a lot of love for Fire Emblem as a series. My first game was actually the sequel to this game, Radiant Dawn on the Wii. I rented it from Blockbuster when that was still a thing. Along with... I rented it alongside the Transformers 2 video game at that point. And, well, I guess in an alternate timeline I became obsessed with Michael Bay's Transformers instead, but luckily we are not on that timeline. So, because of that and a various set of other factors, the Tellius games, Path of Radiance on the GameCube and Radiant Dawn on the Wii, became my two favorite games in the series. Watch as Ike doesn't level up strength. I knew it. They became my favorite games in the series. Their biggest lacking qualities, honestly, being certain aspects of their gameplay, which, how can they be your favorite video games in a series if the gameplay's bad? The gameplay's not bad, per se, at least not in my opinion. Path of Radiant's biggest sins are rather bland map design. Most maps are kind of just an open field and your troops run at the other troops, with a few exceptions. And Radiant Dawn has a lot of issues with character availability. Like most Fire Emblem games, you have one army, and you're playing as them throughout the entire game. In some chapters, you'll get new people to recruit in, but Radiant Dawn, you play as a total of, like, 3 armies over the course of the game, and they are not created equal. I'll say that much. I will try not to spoil anything, because I plan to tackle Radiant Dawn after my playthrough of this game. But yeah, other than those things, the Tellius games do world building fantastically. All the characters are fairly well written, even the one-note ones. Like, in a lot of other things, Boyd would just be a hot-blooded meathead who swings an axe around and he's dumb and strong, and that's all he is. But Boyd and his relationship with his brothers and relationship with their uh, parents are fairly well developed. They've got a couple of facets to them, and they succeed in making the characters feel like people in a world instead of just characters designed to fulfill a niche or a trope. That was the prologue. Nothing really exciting happening in that chapter, just a basic introduction of rudimentary mechanics. Here, the battle begins. We're going to be introduced to a couple new characters. The Grail Mercenary Fort always looks strangely cozy to me. Like, it feels like if I were to actually take the time and patience to, I'd like to honestly rebuild it in something like Minecraft just for the novelty's sake. It's a pretty simple structure, but something about it's just very charming to me. Ooh, frame rate drops. Still working on that issue. Hopefully have it fixed by episode 2 proper of this playthrough. And here we see our first newly introduced character, Titania. She's the deputy commander of the Grail Mercenary Company, and she's going to be fulfilling the archetype of a Jagan, or this is where things will get kind of tricky. Uh, there are two archetypes across Final Games, Jagans and Oifes, named after characters in the first and fourth games in the series respectively. There used to be only Jagans, which were early game pre-promoted units, almost always horsemen of some kind, that join with much higher base stats than your average characters, but much, much lower growth and a lower rate of gaining experience points. So they're kind of a early to mid-game utility as the game lets your other lower level starters catch up. But then Oife came around in Fire Emblem 4, Genealogy of the Holy War, where he fulfilled that niche of the early game pre-promote, but he also had like fairly good growth, so that allowed him to stay useful throughout the entirety of the game, and that's more of what Titania fulfills instead of just a plain Jagan. Like, if you raise your other horse-mounted units to her level across the entirety of the game, they will normally outshine her once they become a first-level pre-promoted unit, but they do not start off nearly as good as she does. Oh, and here we see one of Boyd's brothers, his older brother Oscar, who is suffering from a case of a disease known as broctosis. His eyes are permanently shut, and it's really, really tragic. Oh yeah, basically, Titania good. Titania very, very good. Honestly, you could probably play this entire game with only Titania and Ike as your two units, and the only things that would threaten you would be magic damage based units, as I don't think either of their resistances are very good. But Titania can just dominate the early game, and Ike has pretty good ghosts in this game unless yours ends up losing all of his strength. Like, just never gets it on level ups. Not being a horse unit and only being able to use swords, though, kind of holds Ike back from greatness, even though his stats, numerically, his stats will be very good, but he has no way to really, he doesn't have the ways to utilize those stats for most of the game that horse-mounted units or characters that can use weapon types that aren't swords can. The problem with swords in this game is that other than a couple swords that deal magic damage, there are no ranged attack options for swords. Meanwhile, axe users have throwing hand axes, and lance users have javelins and spears that can be thrown, and they can also attack at melee range. Swords only have sonic swords and the rune sword, which doesn't come till very late in the game, but those both do damage that hits enemy resistance and goes off your unit's magic. And there's only one sword-wielding unit in this entire game that has a good magic stat, and it's not Ike. I mean, your Ike could have a good magic stat, but if he does, then there's some things wrong here. Alright, this is your basic first chapter Fire Emblem fare. There are bandits attacking a village. Main character and his friends must go and help the villagers, because we are the good guys, not the bad guys. Alright, got that guy pretty well set up for a kill. Gonna let Oscar get the last hits here. Boom. And there we go. Congratulations, team. We have officially killed a man. I don't think I'm gonna have Titania fight anybody. Like, that bandit there by the house isn't a threat at all to my units, so I'm just gonna let him be cannon fodder and free EXP for them. I'll just move Titania forward and see if she'll sponge up any aggro from the other enemies on the field. And here's the game explaining to us the concept of destructible villages. If any unit marked as a bandit gets too close to a village tile, they will get destroyed. Or, I guess they're not villages in this one, they're houses. So for the rest of this game, I'll just call them houses instead of villages, but in most Fire Emblem games, the maps are supposed to be like a larger area, and the things you can visit are villages instead of just houses. So here we have one of the biggest things that Path of Radiance and its sequel get some flack for, and it's not entirely unjustified flack either. It's how long the enemy phase can be drawn out, just because it was Fire Emblem's first foray back onto home consoles after an entire generation on the Game Boy Advance. I guess they wanted to see how many on-screen things they could put on the screen with this new hardware in their hands. And in some senses it does allow the scales of the battles fought throughout the game to feel grander, but it also slugs down gameplay. By the way, I'm sorry to anybody who prefers watching Fire Emblem with animations turned off, but every time I've tried playing a Fire Emblem game like that, the experience feels incredibly shallow to me, and I end up enjoying less for it, even though things are going by faster. I just don't like the idea that what are supposed to be characters that you raise through the events of the game get treated as nothing more but stat sticks whose numbers are thrown at enemy numbers and bigger numbers win. Like, that is the core of the game, no matter how you try to dice it. But I would rather see these people fight, like, actually fight instead of just tackle their numbers into somebody else. Strength and res. This is weird. This is exactly how it went the last time I tried recording this with Ike's level ups, with the first level having no strength, but a bunch of other stats, and the second level being only strength and resistance. It kind of makes me cautious because Boyd ended up dying due to a rather unlikely miss in the last playthrough. So, he's hoping history doesn't repeat itself. Does Boyd come with vulneraries? Okay, yeah. Oh, if anybody's wondering what these items down here in their inventories are, like the fighter band and the paladin band on Oscar, those are items that are exclusive to the characters in fixed growth mode. These are the items that make their stats go up in a certain way as opposed to just randomly leveling up. I believe from here on out, having classes have certain growths and characters having modified versions of those growths would become standard fare. No, wait, I think that was standard fare in like every game, and then this one had non-fixed growth mode where everything, all growths were just totally random. I'm not exactly sure. This is something that I should probably look more into, honestly. Anyway, we're nearing the end of this chapter. Let's see if Oscar can hit this guy both times. Oof. He could not. Okay. So, this is what makes horse units so good in this game, is the ability to move after attacking or doing any sort of action, honestly. They have an ability called Canto, which allows them to use their remaining movement after taking another action. They had this ability in the GBA games as well, although to a much nerfed effect, which might have been a bit needed in full honesty, but if they attacked in the GBA games, then they could not move again, but if they just used an item or rescued an ally, then they could move once more after their primary movement. In this game, though, there's nothing limiting them. They can move, attack, move. They can move, item, move. They can move, rescue, move. They like to move it, basically. Also, a lovable recurring thing in Fire Emblem games is making bandits and bandit chiefs just the ugliest people imaginable. Like, I'm sure the art team has a blast trying to make the ugliest bandit portraits they possibly can. Okay, so I'm gonna start moving Boyd into range, actually. I'm going to try to let him get the kill on this enemy boss here for another level up. Part of the way I like to play Fire Emblem games that is arguably inefficient or non-optimal is I have a tendency to spread EXP kind of thin because I just don't like the feeling of some units getting left behind unless they're the like objectively bad units like Wendy from Fire Emblem 6, Sophia from also Fire Emblem 6, half the characters in Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Especially if they're one of the characters you get at the beginning of the game. Like your beginning party, I usually have a soft spot for them, no matter which Fire Emblem game I'm playing. And here we go, that's the boss down. Boyd's gonna get a hefty amount of EXP going from 83 to 38. And let's watch those muscles grow. Ooh, that is a nearly perfect level for Boyd. The only thing missing was defense possibly, but Boyd is up the fighter class, so that's more known for tanking through just having a lot of HP and not so much actual defenses. I'm gonna steal this. Sorry, Boyd. I have Ike bias. Path of Radiance Ike is my favorite Lord/protagonist in the series, actually. I'm sure that's an opinion a lot of people are tired of hearing. Ike this and Ike that, father of Soth's children. But I just really love his character and his development in Path of Radiance. Not so much in Radiant Dawn, In Radiant Dawn, he's kind of, by the events of that game, he's already grown as much as he needs to. It's cool what kind of a nigh unstoppable badass he's considered in Radiant Dawn, but it's not as interesting. There's not much room for him to grow, so it's a lot less entertaining to watch him interact with other characters on screen in Radiant Dawn. Oh, sibling love. Alright, well thank you for joining me for this part of the Fire Emblem Path of Radiance Let's Play. I will be sure to... I'm sorry, be sure to catch the next part shortly after... Within the next few days after this video goes live. I'm going to try to keep a fairly consistent upload schedule. And next time we see each other, we will be tackling Chapter 2 of this game. I will see you all next time.